Peace. All right, welcome everyone. Hello, hello. I am Minister Cole Terrence Randolph Williams. Super grateful to be before you on tonight, this evening, as we are having our Super Tuesday Bible study, spiritual development class. Welcome. You're joining us here live at the Columbia Project, our YouTube channel. We're actually in a nice little intimate space on our Zoom platform, but we're broadcasting live. And every week, I just want you to know on Sundays that you can also join us not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook. And so certainly if you are with us on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and definitely share. We are a community of lovers of God, lovers of faith and action, love and action. That's who we are. So we invite you to connect with us. And so you see here how you can connect with us on the screen. If you happen to be in the area in Maryland, you can see our address there. We would love for you to come out and just be a part of this family, this good experience of love and action. So tonight, our spiritual development class, we're going to be coming from the book of Mark. All right. So if you have a chance, get your pen, your paper out. We're just going to do a nice little unpacking, if you will. The text is going to come from Mark, specifically chapter 7. We're looking at the verses of 1 through 8, then 14 and 15, and 21 and 23. And my style is really, I pull out what has, I guess, kind of listen to the divine and what I feel as far as that I'm motivated to share with you, the community, and then just guide the conversation along that way. So definitely, I encourage you to come on mute. Those of you who are here with me on the Zoom, that we want to share with each other. And then if you're watching us live, even if you're not watching us live, you happen to catch us otherwise, go ahead and put it in the comments. That still kind of shows us who's engaging. And then just a disclaimer, be a little spotty, so please just give grace to me in that space. Okay. All right. So our theme for this particular month, right, the month of September, I had it as power in wisdom, but I also in or of. All right. So, nonetheless, we're talking about power and we're also talking about wisdom. So, I have the title of Falling in Love with Wisdom. And that's just an idea that I would like for you to hold with me this beautiful lesson, this class on tonight. Okay. All right. So, let's get started with the text. I'm going to move my bear with me for 1 second. Okay, my controls. All right, here we go. So we're going to start with the first portion of sounds from this version of the Bible. All right, so it says the Pharisees and some of the religious scholars had come from Jerusalem around Jesus. Disciples were eating with unclean hands, that is, without ritually washing them, right? So for the Pharisees and the Jewish people in general, follow the tradition of their ancestors, and they never eat without washing their arms as far as the elbow, all the way up, like you may see the doctors, right? All right. So moreover, they never eat anything from the market without first sprinkling it. And there are many other traditions which have been handed down to them, such as washing of the cups and the pots and the dishes, all the things. So these Pharisees and religious scholars asked Jesus, why do your disciples not respect the tradition of our ancestors, but eat their food with unclean hands? Ooh, taboo, huh? Jesus answered, well, how accurately Isaiah prophesied about the hypocrites when he wrote, these people honor me with their lips. The doctrines they teach are only human precepts. You disregard God's commandments and cling to human traditions. Next section here is 14, 15, and I added 16 just to give us a convey here. So 14, Jesus summoned the crowd again and said to them, listen to me, all right, all of you, and try to understand. When I highlight something or bold it, that's something I want us to emphasize. Again, if you have your pen and paper, you're writing stuff, So try to understand is what Jesus says. And so 15, it says, nothing that enters us from the outside, okay, makes us impure. It is what comes out of us, that part, highlighted, bold, all the things that makes us impure. And then 16, what I added for context here, it says, if you have ears to hear, then listen. Okay. And so this is what I'm inviting us into as far as the conversation. That if you have ears, to hear, then listen. And I'm emphasizing the ears piece because I want you to think of it not only from a physical standpoint, right? Physically hearing and listening, but also from a spiritual standpoint, right? So if you can get yourself in a posture to really intuitively try to listen to what we're going to be talking about on tonight. All right, cool. Next is verses 21 to 23. Again, highlighted or bolded here, right? So text says 21:4, it is from within, okay? So I'm trying to emphasize this idea, right? I mean, you're going to hear me say ideas terminology on tonight. And then it says here from our hearts, right? That evil intentions emerge. And then it gives us some examples. It's talking about promiscuity, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, obscenity, envy, slander, pride, foolishness, all the things, right? All these evils come from within and make us impure. Okay, so now I just want to share this version real quick because looking at the lectionary has it from the New American Bible. And so when I was doing my pulling my lesson together, I took some of the words from that version to unpack with us. So I just wanted to highlight where that's coming from. All right. So you can see in particular where I bolded, right? So in verse 2 is the word defiled. Okay. But then you also see here, like, just to give you like I guess the theme, if you will, some of the concept as far as the story overall is like they're talking about observing the tradition of the elders. Okay. That word tradition is used very, a couple times throughout this text. Traditions that they observe. Again, tradition. Jesus mentioning about abandoning the commandment of God to hold to a human tradition, right? And so then again, that word defile stood out as well as evil that we're going to unpack on tonight. So just wanted to share that with you so you can see that there, black and white. Excuse me. Notes real quick. Okay, so we're feeling good so far. So good. Yes. Yes. Okay, excellent. All right. So let's talk about it. Yup, let's do it. Let's talk about it. So at the end of the day, idea. Okay, this is what I'm introducing to us tonight are some ideas to walk with me and hold some of these ideas. I invite you to do that. I just don't know where my pen went. So first and foremost, let's talk about this idea of tradition, right? Equating to the idea of access, having access. And so first and foremost, that word defiled or defilement, okay, came up. And so by definition, to be defiled means polluted, unhealthy, or unfit, right? Foods that are unfit. So this, related to foods that were unfit, defilement of religions, character, excuse me, moral or spiritual impurity. Okay. And then that also, so like in another aspect of that word, right, also was the word unclean. Okay. So defilement or unclean was also a way that we can look at this, that in other versions that it does say unclean. So the concept, the idea of unclean would mean uncleanness represents sin. Okay. So sometimes even that word sin, right, you get to sit with that, you get to hear the idea from that word and say, where does that sit with me in terms of what does the definition or the idea of sin, means to me? But particularly in this definition, I just wanted to point that out, that that's what it says, and then we can just walk ourselves, through it, right? So then basically the idea of sin meaning separation, okay? It separates us, this idea of uncleanness, meaning that it separates us from God. All right. And so in the Gospels, those who were considered unclean, they were, it was said that they were like possessed, right? Possessed by an unclean spirit, if you will, right? It says demonic spirit, okay? Through a constant submission to evil, okay? And we're going to, unpack this further, but just giving you that by definition. So again, what I would like and invite you to do is as you hear me, as you see it, start to say to yourself, what does it mean what comes up for me from my own, belief or, ideas or tradition of how I look at the word sin. Now, how do I hear unclean? How I've ever thought about unclean? Have I ever considered to relate to sin or the concept or the idea of it being, separate from God? Or even the fact that it meant, to be, possessed, and then, constant submission to evil, the idea of evil, like all these things you get to do. And that's what I'm inviting you to do on tonight. All right. So next here is this idea about the Old Testament, and in particular, the word of defilement. Okay. So defilement, right, in the Old Testament it wasn't just really, and I appreciate this, because it wasn't limited to to a physical uncleanness, where in the text, you kind of hear like, they weren't washing of the hands all the way to the elbow. They weren't, sprinkling of the food, so you get the imagery of a physical action that needed to be done, right? So physically they weren't upholding to the traditions of cleanliness, if you will. But it also, in terms of the Old Testament, it was talking about more so of a moral and spiritual uncleanness. And that for me is where I think in the aspect of Jesus and his responses, where he's getting us to, or would like us to have the spiritual intuitiveness or understanding about the message here. Okay, so that's good to know, because it's all like it's balance. Okay, so here we are looking at a New Testament text, but we also get to refer to the Old Testament in the way of this concept of defilement, right? And so it's not just from a physical standpoint, but from a moral, spiritual uncleanness. And so it says these symbols centered around the theology of access to the presence of God. So again, in contrast, right, or in perspective overall. So you've got here the Pharisees, the scribes, the people who are saying like they're needing to be a physical demonstration of cleanliness to say that you are worthy of having access to God, right? And here we can see, even going back to the Old Testament, that it's not just about the physical, and yet this information is saying it's about still having access to the presence of God. Okay, so hold that or jot that down as something that you want to, again, start to say, hey, did I ever have this idea? Did I ever think that before? Or this is something new that I would like to maybe unpack and sit with for my own growth. Okay, cool. So now defilement or uncleanness, right? Again, we're using these two, relates to this issue. Again, the idea of access. Okay. And so observing and following the traditions, particularly in what was called the Mosaic Code from Moses, meant that you had access to God. Okay, so a little backstory for you there. And then we have this idea of holiness. So now we're just moving us along down this path in terms of the idea of having access to God, how that shows up. Does somebody have something to say? I heard a little chime in. Oh, okay. So, but jump in if you do. But yeah, so we're moving on to the idea of access of holiness. Okay. So now, holy, this Hebrew root word that you can't pronounce because it looks like just letters, it says that it describes that which was separated or dedicated to a special Godward purpose, right? So you have the idea of, you understand, like, being set aside for the Sabbath, okay? The tabernacle of incense was a situation, in the Old Testament that was being recognized. Religious convocations, right? We blessed our journey that we have coming up in October to convocation, right? So again, it's this idea of being separated, set apart, something of importance in terms of being dedicated, as it says, to a Godward purpose, right? And so then it talked about a holy lifestyle, okay? So even this language, right? What does that pull up for you, right? Especially some of us have different backgrounds, right? The idea of a holiness lifestyle, coming from an institution that was known as the holiness, church, you know what I mean? Some of that language, we may have that in us or in our awareness that could even, come up for us as we start to unpack this and, hear me talk about it. So you get to do that. You get to say what's sitting in me, what's holding in me, how do I relate what's already in me to what we're talking about tonight. So a holiness lifestyle, maybe some of what you have been exposed to comes from these ideas of the acts of holiness. Okay. All right. So now we've got the priests, right? So the priests were holy in a technical sense, where they had higher expectations. Okay, so definitely you can look at the book of Leviticus. Okay, and so you can really see that certain people, right, like the Pharisees and scribes, certain people had if you will, higher expectations, but certainly the priests did, and how they moved about amongst the people. And you have the space of the tabernacle, right? The tabernacle, which is also known as the most holy place, right? How that was revered and understood and just held for the people during that time. Okay, so we've got the Pharisees, like I said, some of the scribes. Now, here's what's happening, right, in this New Testament, in the book of Mark, that they're holding Jesus to this tradition and their ideas and understanding, right, and their awareness of what's considered to be holy, okay, and how that holiness, that idea is giving access to God, okay, the presence of God. So look at Jesus here. I call it the radical idea, the shift is that Jesus is saying it's not what you take in. Remember all the things that they were labeling. It's not what you take in that defiles you, but what comes out. So I really want us to now hold this idea about, he's saying it's not about what I take in, but what comes out. So now you get to ask yourself, what does that mean? What's in that's going to come out? At least that's what I'm encouraging us to do, to think about that, these ideas. So let's talk about some more ideas. How we doing so far? So far, so good. Okay. So next idea is we're gonna look at, and this is what I was saying about my inspiration from spirit, from intuitive guidance. Reading this for me, especially the language around separation, immediately what comes up to me is ain't nothing separating me for the love of God. Okay. And that's how I hold it, right? So I want to encourage you, if you don't know, now you know. Okay, nothing separates you from the love of God. So I wanted to share this idea of Romans 8:38 with you, right? And these are just some translations I think that'll kind of activate that even more of a radical idea. I call it the radical idea. All right. So in the New Living Translation, right? Excuse me, it says, nothing can ever separate us from God's love. Nothing. And it goes on to say, neither death, nor life, nor angels, demons, all the things, right? And so listen, this is for me the gift. No fears. You don't have to worry about what's going on today. You ain't got to worry about what's going on tomorrow, right? Not even powers of hell, if you hold that as a construct, okay, can separate you from God's love. So now when we're talking about the conversation of things that I gotta do or don't do that's gonna give me access, come on, ain't nothing gonna separate me from God's love. So I needed to just impart that, encourage you on that, encourage you with that for the night. All right, on this Tuesday night. All right, so look at this part. Passion Translation. I've never heard of it, but I like it. The Passion Translation. It says, now I live with confidence. Okay. So, I mean, really, if you got your pen and paper, why not use this as an affirmation for yourself? Okay. Say, now I live with confidence that there is nothing, no thing in the universe. All right. Sometimes that word universe is just so vast, it's so big. That's why I want you to go with this idea of Romans 8:38. There's nothing in the universe with the power to separate us from God's love. I put from twice, but what else? I'm going to keep it moving. All right. I love us so much. Okay. So let's talk about this idea, next idea of what Jesus was saying, what's within comes without. And here's where I wanted to guide us in the text, first and foremost, in verse 15, right? So it says, nothing that enters us from the outside makes us impure. So here we talked about defiled and unclean. So we are going to hold that, right? We're going to hold those definitions, those concepts in this space, right? So as far as what we learned about that, there's nothing that enters us from the outside that's going to make us defiled, going to make us unclean. And Jesus is saying it's what comes out of us that makes us defiled or unclean, meaning the same. Okay? Yes. I heard somebody. If you guys say something, please speak up. I don't want to miss you. But if you're just doing the amen, I'm grateful. Thank you. Okay, so let's go. So then it says in 16, if you have ears to hear, then listen, right? So in the beginning, I encouraged us with this same message, right? And it's gonna come into play a little bit more, but now, like, let's just look at that, right? If you have ears to hear, then listen, okay? So Jesus is encouraging us when he's gonna, give us some instruction here. He's encouraging us not just to listen to what's being said, right? So imagine yourself in that space with Jesus and the scribes and the Pharisees. I always want us to put us right there in the text. Imagine you're right there. And Jesus is saying, I need you to hear me on this. What Jesus is doing is encouraging you to use your higher level of consciousness. And that's what I want us to do. We get to be in the physical trust. That's fine, right? Because you hear the words that's coming out of my mouth. Okay. But I'm encouraging us to go up a level and hear it, what's behind the words. And that's what we're going to unpack for us a little bit further. So in 21, where he's saying it's within from our hearts, right? So here's the higher level, is now it's about it's what's in, is what's what he's saying, what comes out that makes us defiled, unclean. So it's talking about what's in our hearts, right? If you ever heard of this book called As a Man Thinketh, so yeah, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, it's really talking about your mind, and your mind being your consciousness, your awareness, right? Connecting with that which is in your heart. And a heart is the example of, like, how we hold our emotions, how we hold our feelings, our thought is connected to our mind. So all of that is where the heart guides us. That's the concept that I'm bringing with us. So what's in our heart, what guides you, that's what's going to come out. And so it's saying here that that's where evil intentions can emerge. I'm saying can emerge, right? So this is where we want to pay attention to this word evil now and be like, well, shucks, what will be considered evil, right? It gave the list in the text, but let's bring it into our current awareness right now. So let's talk about it. All right. So in the Oxford dictionary, it says that evil basically means profoundly immoral and wicked, right? So we understand that, like, profoundly immoral and wicked, straightforward. Okay. I'm going to give us this metaphysical definition, right? Which to me allows us to unpack it even further, because that's what we're doing. We're elevating our mindset to unpack the word even further for ourselves, so we can, take it, embody it, love it, all the good things, and apply it. Point blank period. Apply it to our lives. Okay. So now it says, evil means that which is not of God. Doesn't that sound so simple and plain, right? But look at the contrast, right? Because remember, the Pharisees were talking about that which wasn't of God, right? But they were talking it from a physical standpoint. In this metaphysical standpoint, we're talking about, again, more of a mindset, if you will, in terms of, it says, unreality and error thought. So now you've got some terminology that you may not have heard before, you may not have considered, and I want you now to consider the idea of this definition from a metaphysical standpoint of what the word evil means. So jotting this down, words like error thought, right? So let's unpack this. Okay, so basically, apparent evil is the result of ignorance, right? So, somebody may say ignorance is bliss, right? Nah, it ain't so much bliss. It ain't all good, okay? Ignorance is, it's a form of you not being connected to the divine in terms of the consciousness of God, okay? And so it says when truth is present, right, then error disappears, right? We've heard this idea, right, from text, or some people may have read it in scripture. I don't have the exact version as far as the chapter where it is, but listen to the idea, right, where Jesus has says, I am the truth, way, and life, right? So truth, right? Understanding what is not ignorance, we can put that to the idea of Jesus, and what Jesus saying is truth. That's where we want to put our mind, because when the truth shows up, then the error, right, which is not of God, disappears. Okay, we good with this? How I'm trying to connect this to this concept of a metaphysical definition of evil, right? In terms of the error thought. Okay, next point. So it says, there is one presence, one power, God omnipotent. All right. So now let's think about that. Do you yourself agree with that? Okay. Do you believe that? Right. These are things that, even as I'm saying, it doesn't mean you take it as your truth. But if you do, right, let's start to imagine, what does that mean as God being one presence, one power, right? God being omnipotent. Okay. And so it says we have the privilege and the freedom of choice to use and embody this power as we will. So what is that really saying now, right? What it's saying to us that if we understand that there's one presence, one power, God the omnipotent, right? we have access to that idea of God being one presence, one power, God the omnipotent of everything, of all things, right? Remember, we said there is no thing that's going to separate us from God's love. So when we get to understand the idea of there being one presence, one power, we've heard ideas of love being one love, the presence of love being pure, being all, absolute. We get to come in and say, okay, we have the privilege and the freedom to choose this idea of power. We have the idea to choose this idea of love and the connection of the idea that God, right? God, who we say we are connected to and we choose to be connected to, is one. Meaning, so like when people say we're all one, right? It's not just some you know, um, lofty idea or something that sounds good. I need you to sit with it and say, I believe that we really are one. Why? Because God is one. And if I'm connected to God, the idea that is one, that's why I can say my sister, my brother is one, that we are all one. Okay. So now let's look at the next piece where it says the misuse of this idea, right? The misuse of this power brings out inharmonious conditions. Okay, so let's bring it to an example like on the basic level where we talk about the heart being connected to the mind. Sometimes when you're out of harmony, there may be some negative thoughts, there may be some ill feelings, right, towards another, towards a situation, what have you. All I'm saying is the point is there will be a manifestation of inharmonious conditions. And that's because we, again, have the privilege and the freedom to choose to use and embody this power. So now we just want to understand that we have the power, we have the ability, we have the freedom and the privilege, and that when maybe we don't choose to embody this power, there could be evidence of inharmonious conditions if we misuse that power. Okay. So that's what I feel like when Jesus is talking about what comes out of us, right? What comes out of us, misusing the power, not choosing to embody the understanding of our oneness with the divine, our oneness with this power of God being one present in us, as us, through us, then that's where inharmonious conditions come about. And as it says here, these conditions, right now we tie it all together, is called evil, right? So the metaphysical definition of this word really allows us to go deeper, allows us to see that to where we can say, okay, I can sit with that for myself, this concept, this idea, as far as where Jesus is trying to show us what's in us is what's coming out. And then we get to dissect, well, what is in us, right? That's coming out. Okay, cool with that. All right, so one last thing about this whole error thought, because again, I know that this is something new that we, is not part of our regular or daily, language in terms of looking at this term of evil. So error thought, right, is humankind is not in spiritual understanding. So remember I said I wanted to emphasize this part about if you have ears to hear. Jesus is saying, if you have the spiritual understanding, okay, if you have the spiritual discernment, so that's where it's saying humankind, the error thought. So we don't want to be in error thought, right? Remember, when truth shows up, then the error disappears. So we want to be in truth. We want to operate in the spiritual understanding, the spiritual discernment, right? The intuitive knowing. So again, error thought is us not having this, not being in that state, okay? Not choosing our freedom and our privilege that we have to embody this power, right? The intuitive knowing of that which is true of God being linked to the activity of the mind, meaning we again are connected to the divine, right? Our thoughts should be connected to the divine. So, you've got again ideas being introduced to us throughout our journey and our faith, saying we need to be conformed to the renewing of the mind. Family, I need you to understand that your mind is powerful, and we're not using that word loosely because that's where the energy, the activity of the divine connects with us, right? And so tonight, I want you to embody this idea of having spiritual understanding, spiritual discernment, intuitive knowing, and that you have this already. So sometimes I think, for me, I know where I'm trying to like understand a concept. For whatever reason, I come from the space of, oh, I must not have it because I'm not already thinking about it, or I'm not already really in the space of like everything that I just broke down. You know what I mean? Like, the knowledge of that. But no, we want to cancel that and we want to shift our minds to the fact that we already have it, but it's just a matter of bringing that out. So then that's where we're going to say, thank you, God, for allowing me to have this awareness now. I may not have had it in this way, in this descriptive manner that I'm learning, but God, thank you that I'm aware that it's already in me and that I want to increase this, right? I want to increase this knowledge. I want to increase this understanding. So know that that's also how Jesus shows up in love. I believe whenever Jesus is giving us a lesson, that it's like, hey, if you have ears to hear, it's not that you don't have it. He's bringing to your memory that you do have it. So it's more like an aside. Like, let's try to shift our mindset. Let's try to shift our awareness that, what does it mean to have ears, to have the spiritual understanding of this intuitive knowing that the true God is linked to us through our mind, through our consciousness, right? And we get to do this. Like I said, the choice is renewing our mind, right? Not being conformed to this lower, where it talks about the error thought. Let's just leave it simple as that. And I'm gonna move us forward. Okay, cool. So the mind of God is where we are, and that's our goal. That's our idea, to be in the space of what's coming out, and that is that we want to be with embodiment with the mind of God. Jesus wants us to do that, to have the embodiment of the mind of God, that which is within. That's what's going to come out, right? Fruits of the Spirit is going to come out for us. Okay. All right. Now we get to this point of wisdom, because I started out with the whole, fall in love with wisdom, that part. So here we go. The idea of what's within comes out is wisdom. Walk with your boy, okay? So wisdom from the Oxford says good judgment. Guess what? When we get the embodiment, right, of being connected to the divine, we get to exercise good judgment, wisdom, right? The quality of being wise, intelligent, discernment, right? This word discernment is just, as you see it, black and white discernment. But before we talked about spiritual discernment. Doesn't that sound sexy? Spiritual discernment. We want to be in a space of spiritual discernment. So again, it's not just from a physical intelligence, right? Spiritual ears, let us hear, right? But from the spiritual hearing, the spiritual enlightenment, the spiritual discernment of always having the renewal, always having connection to the divine. And that, again, is where we're just going to come from a space of gratitude. It's not we're going to think like a lack, a limitation. Oh, we don't have it, or I'm not thinking positive. No, it's not about that. It's about, oh my God, I just got this awareness and it's already in me. Thank you, God, that I get to grow, that I get to be in this higher mindset of elevation, that this is just going to continue to be exercised in me and through me, because I believe that you, God, are my source, the one God, all the things. Okay. Now let's look at the wisdom metaphysical aspect, right? The intuitive knowing, the spiritual intuition. It says the voice of God within us as the source of our understanding. So again, look how powerful you are. You get to lean in on the source of your understanding. You've heard, again, this awareness, this concept of do not lean to your own understanding. Your own is not that you are, not with, like you don't have enough, that you're not smart, you're not intelligent. You got that, right? What I'm saying is there's just a higher level, a higher aspect of discernment, a spiritual discernment, where you're going to lean into the source, right? That omnipresence, the God within, the source, that you have the freedom and the privilege to choose, right? That's what you're going to operate from, right? So I want you to now sit with this and say, do I have a knowing about my source? This spiritual understanding that this guy keeps talking about? Okay. And then if you don't, it's not that it's not there, but you get to say, now that I'm aware about it, I want to exercise it even more. Okay. So it's talking about the mental action based on the Christ mind. For me, I'm gonna keep it simple with you. Who's talking in the conversation? It's the Christ, it's Jesus, right? And Jesus is simply telling us what we need to focus on as far as being, what's good, right? And so I'm going to keep it simple. Wisdom, right? We need to focus on the wisdom, the good judgment, the quality of being wise, the spiritual discernment, having that perception, having the ability to have that God consciousness, right? And so the mental action now, remember I was talking about the mind and the heart being connected. The mental work is having our mind and our hearts in alignment, that based on the Christ mind, that truth, right? Where the error thought disappears when we tap into the truth is within us, right? We get to embody this idea that the truth is already within, okay? So then this knowing. So here's the last piece I want to just emphasize. You know, but there's like a knowing on different, like there's levels to it, right? So you know from an intelligent standpoint, you know from experience, you know from, reading, you know from somebody else's experience, if you will. But I need you to see the magic and the gift of what God has already put inside you, that there's a different level of a capacity of knowing that transcends this intellectual knowledge that you get from the outside. So now again, it's not about what's on the outside, right? That's why nothing can separate you from God's love, because God has already built in you this truth. And I need you to see that you come fully equipped with this truth, okay? So the truth within, that's where we want to have our intuitive knowing. Look, the hat is excited. Like the truth is I'm sorry. But yeah, the truth within us is what's already in us. And that's the wisdom, family, that I want us to fall in love with. And fall in love with. See what I did there? All right. So let's look at this. I kept saying this word embodiment, and I think that's kind of where I am right now in my journey about how can I embody this idea of my connection to the divine, to the source. Okay. So that's where I'm encouraging you to do the same, entertain the idea. So write down this word embodiment. Embodiment simply means a tangible or visible form of an idea, a quality or feeling. So you've got words like incorporation, realization, personification, and my favorite is manifestation, right? How many times we use that word manifestation? It's like manifestation is like the new black, right? I manifest this, I manifest that. Like I told you earlier in my testimony, I manifested a new home, a new apartment, right? So grateful. So, but the point I want to emphasize for us is that the embodiment is for you to visualize this idea of you already having the intuitive knowing of your connection to the divine, right? And so the fruits of the spirit, that's already within. That may be something that we need to exercise more. We need to peel back and find it, discover it, what have you. But know that you come fully equipped and there's no activities outside of you that's going to cancel you out in terms of you having access to the presence of God. So let's talk about this falling in love, and then we're going to just open up for a conversation and close us out. How can we embody this idea of wisdom? All right. And I'm just going to help you out with this text again, as far as wisdom, right? So how can we embody not only just from the, standard version of exercising good judgment or embodying good judgment, the quality of being wise and having discernment, but also more so, which I'm emphasizing, is the metaphysical, right? How can we embody this intuitive knowing? How can we embody this spiritual discernment, this spiritual intelligence? How can we embody the truth that's within us, right? How can we fall in love? When's the last time you fell in love? If you are in love right now, I dare you to talk about it. Let's do that. Why can't we? Because it says to embody is to have this tangible, this real, visible substance, family, this idea, this quality, this feeling was the word, right? So how can we fall in love with this idea of wisdom, right? How can we fall in love with having the spiritual discernment in terms of exercising our ears, the enlightenment to hear, right? Do you believe that you have access to God? You know what I'm saying? So these are just some of the things that you could look at, go through it. But this is where I want us to start to have conversations. So those of you who are joining us on YouTube, put your stuff in the chat. Even if it's after the fact, put your stuff in the chat. But right here, right now, in this intimate space on Zoom, let's talk about it, right? So we're going to close out with the idea of falling in love with wisdom. How can you embody this idea? Look at the different questions that I have right here, and let's talk about it. All right, let's go. Reverend Janet, start us off, please.
Okay, well, the best way to embody, fall in love with the embodiment of wisdom, fall in love with wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
is allowing God to work within you and relying on how God leads instead of using your own understanding, as you brought up earlier. You're leaning to where God takes you on that journey and dealing with whatever comes with that journey. Because if God led you there, God didn't lead you there to just leave you out there hanging on your own. And so the wisdom comes in the fact that you know this.
Mm,
You know that God is the source that's within us. And so in knowing that, you allow things to go as you're being led from within,
mm.
at your own choice, but that is within you.
Ooh, that's so good. Gucci good. All right, Deacon Renee. Let's go, lady. What you got
So
for
for
us?
me, wisdom is the sum of my life's experiences that have lessons attached to them.
Rich.
That's how I see wisdom. Everything that I have gone through in life that has taught me a lesson has brought about some wisdom.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Let's see. Oh, I got my Deacon Paulette. I apologize, I didn't see you. Just saying greetings to you. I love you. So happy to see you. Hey, Trusty Marlene, you want to chime in for us? Hey, Deacon, what's going on? Hey, hey, hey. So glad you're here.
Well, it's internal, that's for sure.
Yes.
And it's kind of a personalization
Mm-hmm.
um, of what we know to be God's love and informing us about life.
Mm,
And I guess it's the falling in love part is all, it's really all falling in love with righteousness.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Hey, Deacon Paulette, did you hear anything that you want to chime in about? I want to give you the opportunity to share anything.
Well, thank you for a thorough lesson.
Yeah.
Night, Minister. I've enjoyed everything thus far. Sorry, please excuse my tardiness. We were out finishing our the end of our travel here.
Yeah, welcome back.
Um,
Good to hear you.
Thank you. You all as well. Again, excuse me being off you.
Oh, good. You're good.
I knew when you started talking about the wisdom that I wanted to uh, check Proverbs out,
Mm,
and particularly chapter 9 in Proverbs. The language addresses this entity. I really don't know how to label it.
mm-hmm.
This emotion, this feeling, this I'm at a loss here for that. But
Okay.
it's in the female reference.
Female energy, absolutely. The feminine, the divine feminine.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
wisdom has built her house.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Wisdom has built her house, and it goes on to say, I mixed some drink, I've made some bread. If you're a foolish person, turn in here
Mm-hmm.
so I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to be lost. I don't want you to be foolish. Turn in this way. And that gave me the thought of that is what the Lord expects of us one to another.
Mm,
If we see a brother or sister in error and we're able to address them, we're able to talk to them. We're able to sit with them so that they don't get caught up in the snares of the evil, but they can walk toward the light, that wisdom, true wisdom from God, the righteousness that the Holy Spirit comes to educate us and to lead and guide us, because it was promised. So we definitely can hone in on metaphysically, however you want to do it. Metaphysically, we can hone in on that power. We are that energy.
Yes.
We are one with the Creator. There we are.
Yes.
Made in the image, it's us.
Yes, ma'am.
It's us. So we can seek that, particularly when we're seeking to help and to empower and to help strengthen our brothers and sisters and others that may come into our paths. Definitely the the energy is ready because it's that good energy. It's the positive energy. And we know that that comes from the eternal. So this wisdom thing, it's ours for the taking, and it embodies us. We are a part of the eternal. We can claim that. We can stand right there and watch not only God's salvation, but watch the power that God can well within us and using us as instruments, if we will. If we will. God is not a forceful God. But if we will, we can see the miraculous. And I'll just say this in my closing. We know that Christ sent the disciples out by twos, but he sent them out with power to do what they had seen him do, to do healings, to help, to make whole, and our help is always with us as well. The spirit, that will lead and guide us into the truth. And of course, in Proverbs said that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Understanding where the real power is. That is the beginning of this, of embodying and being able to express and be moved and utilized by this wisdom entity, by her. I didn't say it, the book said it. By her, okay? By this thing that is the feminine power. I'm at a loss for it. This gender thing, it comes and goes, right? But we have access. And I'm grateful, and great lesson tonight, brother. Appreciate you.
Likewise. Deacon Paulette showed up with the power. I love it. I love it. She came with that word. Thank you for sharing. Grateful to have you here. Deacon Pam, is it all right if I check in with you? Anything you wanted to share?
I'm gonna pass. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Thank you so much. All right, Pastor, I will ask that you close us out. Before I do, let me just go here, make sure I covered everything. Yeah, okay. So definitely, family, this is going to conclude us for tonight in terms of our Bible study lesson, our spiritual development class. Our pastor is also going to have some closing words to share with us. But again, I just want to thank you for joining me tonight, allowing me to be here. I missed every last one of you. So look forward to seeing you as well come next month, I think. Next month and the month after that, at least up until November. But nonetheless, please come back, share with us on Tuesdays your insights. Even like I said, if we're done here, you can put them in the chat. Tuesday night, 7:30 for Bible study. You can join us on this intimate space on Zoom. And then throughout the week, or the end of the week, rather, on Sundays, you can find us at the not only YouTube, Facebook, but in person at the 120 Allegheny Avenue. And certainly, if you do have the means to bless and provide as far as any donations, we receive it. We appreciate that, because freely as you give, freely you shall receive. And so, Pastor, I'm going to turn it over to you and say thank you for closing us out.
Thank you, Minister Cole. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for your participation. I wanted to contribute to the set of questions that you had
Yeah,
contributed to answer, I wanted to take a look at Proverbs rather, the 4th chapter. I'll just read a few of the verses. Listen, children, to your father's instruction, and pay attention in order to gain understanding. I give you sound teaching, so do not abandon my instruction.
Mhm.
When I was a son to my father, not yet strong, and an only son to my mother, he taught me and told me, let your heart fully embrace what I have to say. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom. Get understanding. Do not forget to aside from words of my mouth, or turn aside from the words of my mouth. Do not abandon her, that is wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is of utmost importance. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all of your effort, work to acquire understanding. Work to acquire understanding.
Amen.
Praise her, and she will exalt you. Indeed, if you embrace her, she will honor you. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will present to you a crown of beauty. Listen, my son, accept my words, and you'll live a long, long time. I have directed you in the way of wisdom, and I have led you along the straight paths. When you walk, your step will not be hindered. And when you run, you will not stumble. Hold on to instruction and do not let it go. Guard wisdom because she is your life.
Yes, 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 yes.
Wow.
Yep.
It's powerful stuff.
So, Minister asks, how can we be the embodiment of wisdom? We have to pursue it. We have to pursue wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom is here. Wisdom surrounds us. Wisdom dwells in us, but we have to be active in pursuing wisdom.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to be active to opening our hearts and our minds to wisdom. Ask for wisdom, seek wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the apostle said, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the next question, how do we fall in love? We fall in love through the pursuit.
Yeah, that's
You know
good.
how you pursued other people or allowed them to
Yeah.
pursue you. You know how the more you pursue them and the more you learn about them, the more you begin to love them.
Yeah.
So this passage really kind of crafts out that way of falling in love with wisdom. Seek wisdom out, right? She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will adorn you, right?
Yeah, yeah,
She
yeah.
will continue to direct you, right? She will not let you stumble when you run. She will be your guard. She will cover you. You do the pursuit. You do the chasing. You do the courting.
Yeah.
That's how you fall in love with wisdom, right? And then you will begin to know. So what would or could it feel like? You will begin to know that you have this love relationship with wisdom as wisdom continues to unveil herself to you, reveal herself to you. Those moments when you have to make a decision by discerning what to do based on a set of standards, or decisions to make based on a set of standards that you've learned from experience, from being taught, from studying, pursuing, from asking for wisdom, asking for guidance. Then you will begin to see and experience wisdom just dwelling in you and around you and guiding you. And I'm not saying it as if it's something out there that you can't reach, but I'm saying it. I read this passage first to remind you that wisdom is something that we all have an innate ability to pursue and to fall in love with, right?
Right. Right.
Right. And so I encourage you to continue to pursue wisdom. And we're never too young or too old to pursue wisdom, right? And
Right.
wisdom surrounds us and guides us and keeps us. In that 13th verse of Proverbs 4 says, because she is your life.
Yes. Yes.
And Minister Cole started by saying, nothing will separate you from the love of God. Nothing will separate you from wisdom either.
Right.
Right?
Amen.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So embrace her,
Love of that.
love her, pursue her, seek her out, let her guide you, let her continue to show you what this relationship with wisdom can mean for you and for your life.
That's good.
So thank you,
Amen.
everyone. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you,
your
Pastor.
participation in this class, and Minister Cole, of course, for this wonderful class. Thank you for those of you who are here and those of you who are with us on YouTube. Those of you who may stumble across our class, we invite you to come back again. And as Minister Cole said, you're also welcome to join us in person at 120 Allegheny Avenue in Towson, Maryland. God loves you, and so do I. Be
Amen.
blessed. Mr. Cole, back to you.
All right. Well, this is us signing off. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing